Hi, welcome to Sapphire Suites. The meeting is right in here.
Hi, welcome to our yearly review meeting. I'm Alex, the GM. Team, would you care to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Ariane, I'm the revenue manager.
I'm Winnie, I'm the quality manager.
I'm Jonathan, I'm the marketing manager.
And we're waiting on Carly, our channel distributions manager.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I'm Carly, the distribution channel manager. Nice to meet you.
We're a 4-star hotel in the city center. Originally, we were focused on business guests and therefore focusing on high occupancy for weekdays, but lower for the weekends in comparison. We offer services to both groups, large and small, as well as catering to GDS's OTAs and wholesalers. In regards to pricing, us at Sapphire Suites care about our guests more than our competitors, and therefore we implement value-based pricing instead of competition-based pricing. As the year began, our plan was to focus on business guests and build our hotel around them. But as you can see, our hotel evolved to its actual reality, not the expected one. At the start of the year, our 2 annual goals were to improve market indexes and profitability. Even though both occupancy and ADR increased compared to our past 3 years, the indexes were below 100, showing that we were not improving as much as our competitors. However, we successfully managed our gross operating profit. We achieved a yearly GOP of 41.8%, which is really good here because the senior management at Sapphire Suites only requires a GOP of 21%.
So just to give you a brief overview of this year's performance. So first of all, we averaged our highest net profit in Q3. However, we could have done better if we had balanced our ADR and our occupancy. Indeed, our occupancy was only 69.7% in Q3, whereas it was 72.9% in Q2. We started off our year with a lower season in Q1, and that ended as well with a lower season in Q4. In Q2, we averaged the highest occupancy, and Q3, we averaged the highest ADR. So let's get into some nitty-gritty details on how everything went by.
Let's talk about expenses. This year, we handled our expenses quite well. In fact, in August, we even decreased them by 24% from the previous month. But after that, things did not go quite well. In September, they increased by 27.5%, and they stayed quite high with increases for the rest of the year. This year, we accepted 1 group request. Now you might be asking, why would we accept this group request so early on in the year? Well, it's because we had a quite low performance at the start of the year with very low ADR and occupancy. How did we choose our price of 110 for the group request? Well, we looked at our cost per room, our quality levels, which were quite low at the time, and our large group prices over the past years, that being 120. We decided to go lower to get a competitive advantage. What adjustments did we make after we found out about the group request? Well, we adjusted our marketing expenses to be proportionately higher on the weekends, as our weekday occupancy would be extremely high because of the large group coming in. After the RFP, we saw that GoPar increased by 38 because of the multiplier effect, the cost per room decreased by 6, and our profit margin increased. We made a couple mistakes in regards to forecasting for the RFP. We accidentally calculated occupancy percentage with the RFP instead of without. We've learned some things, and we recommend for our next RFPs to remember that constrained demand is not influenced by the RFP, as well as to focus on the low seasons, because large group requests are not really necessary for the high, as our occupancy is already quite high.
When we examined the different KPIs during weekday and weekends, we immediately realized that the weekend occupancy was higher during the months from June to October, seen by this chart over here. Looking at the data extracted here with the daily market demand for each segment, we found no obvious fluctuation in segment demands from weekday and weekends. Looking at the data extracted here from the daily market demand for each segment, we found no obvious fluctuation in segment demands from weekday and weekends, where weekday daily demand for most segments was higher than that of weekends except for package and tour. Since daily demand did not fluctuate, we should have seen an increase in the weekday occupancy to follow that of weekends. We have observed several consequences in other sections, such as the biggest variance in our distribution channel cost in Q3, as well as the large revenue variance in that time period.
For the distribution channels, we can notice a drastic increase in the beginning of each quarter for the variances. For example, for the first months, the variance reached 52 and 53% for transient forecast in terms of premium and package. This could be explained by the fact that we have no knowledge as to what to expect for the months to come. Thus, our predictions tended to be further away from the actual results that we expected. We tried to base our numbers based on the forecast we received from last year at the same time, but as the service level of our hotel increased as well, it does become more appealing to customers, thus harder for us to measure our actual fair share and not the measured one from last year. This translates to a variance that goes as high as 120 to 130% in August in the Q3 peak season. As aforementioned, we did not realize to what heights the occupancy would rise to, and thus had a hard time precisely forecasting what would be accurate, making the average variance for Q3 29%, for example.
Firstly, looking at the overview of occupancy throughout the months, we see that there are several variances that were out of the 5% control bounds. We noticed that the variances were especially high each time we entered a new quarter. Now, taking a closer look, the first spike in occupancy percentage in March is due to the RFP, as we went over before. In April, entering the second quarter, we did not expect demand to increase as significantly and were too cautious with our prediction. In turn, in October, on the other hand, entering the quarter 3, we expected demand to drop much more rapidly, but the transition happened softer than expected. For the high demand season starting July, we expected to be able to increase actual occupancy by about 5% from the end of quarter 2. Despite a spike in refurbishment levels, increased ADR by 26.5% proved to be too significant, thus we were unable to reach the forecasted occupancy. For August, we were overly cautious again as we witnessed an increase in actual occupancy by 8%, which was due to vastly improved refurbishment levels in 6 out of 8 categories. In September, we aimed to continue on the same occupancy level of about 70%. However, the actual occupancy was 9% lower. After examining the overall market demand, we found that demand for all hotels decreased, leading to the inaccurate forecast. This variance also partially caused one of the most significant revenue variances of -18%, as John explained earlier. For the coming quarters, the most important recommendation is to base our decisions more on the historic data and to learn from the seasonal changes. Should we secure another RFP, we now have to accurately forecast occupancy, including the RFP. Lastly, we want to make sure to keep constant levels of quality to avoid any negative impact on occupancy levels.
In this section, we've taken the different segments and compared it to their profit contribution. This graph seen here is the comparison of each segment's average market share and their corresponding profit contribution. The most interesting outcome lies in the transient group, covering premium, bar, and package. As we can see, the market share percentage seems to be going the opposite way of the profit contribution. We will disregard the premium rate data due to the fact that we only have 50 rooms available. Since there is a high market share of the package rates, the profit contribution should have been a lot higher than seen. This could be due to the inaccurate forecast by the team, which led to a high revenue variance, as explained in other sections. For future recommendations, we would suggest the team to carefully take into account the market demand for each segment in order to accurately conduct forecasting and effectively reduce revenue variances.
So now to delve into the marketing expenses. So we encountered some problems with our marketing efforts. This is indeed the case, as we did not realize that the option for marketing and sales corresponded not only to the marketing segment, but also to the one of sales. Thus, while trying to achieve a marketing expense of around 4 to 6% on the higher end, we actually had an average of 2.6%, which went as low as 1.83% during our RFP in March. We can also look at the marketing percentages per distribution channel and observe that we spent the most on OTAs in terms of cost to profit ratio, 4.27%, as the costs associated to it are high, but their unconstrained demand still remains high. Moreover, we can still observe that the majority of our marketing spend, roughly 62%, was focused on the direct channel, as there is no cost associated with it, and as well they have the highest unconstrained demand level. The revenue achieved by the direct settlement can also justify that we have made the right choice in our spending here. And the mistake that leads to our low marketing expenses can also explain why our marketing efforts do not necessarily peak our revenue in certain months.
As our initial positioning was targeted at business travelers, we decided to build a business center that was finished in March, but not the other facilities that targeted more leader customer segments, of course with undeniable expensive capital investment. This graph shows our monthly progress on price-value math throughout the year. Disappointingly, the quality of the Sapphire suite is not ideal due to a misconception in what each decision may affect the price-value map as compared to the competitors. The second graph demonstrates the accumulated number of completion in actions, such as increasing of services, building facilities, and refurbishing. We believed at the time that doing refurbishment would be enough to boost quality scores, and we maintained doing so every month, especially just before and during high seasons. However, evidently it is not enough to increase the quality scale on the price value map. The quality team has later learned from the mistake after noticing the lack of facilities as compared to the competitors, and thus built more facilities, which were all completed in August. With this, we were able to differentiate our hotel by extending our services that are for target markets other than just business travelers. As can be seen from the first graph, the quality has drastically increased after the completion of the facilities. While maintaining refurbishments and increasing services periodically, the quality have never dropped as inconstantly after. In addition, it also demonstrates that increasing service and facilities definitely pushed up GOP sustainably, with a month delay each time new services or facilities were implemented. The most prominent example being August, where we implemented the largest amount of refurbishments, services, and facilities, seeing the result in September with the highest GOP of 52% of the year. While refurbishments maintain the level of quality and GOP, a lack of action quickly leads to a decrease in performance. The top 3 months for RevPAR are respectively August, July, and May. Regardless that Q3 is peak season and it may be the reason of the variation, performance in May is still prominent enough to have the third highest RevPAR this year. This graph examines if the refurbishment has an effect on the hotel performance. The shaded fields are when the refurbishment is finished, demonstrating when the effect will be in place. We are able to draw a conclusion that in this year, refurbishment in lobby and public areas, front desk, meeting rooms, and associate facilities has a great effect on hotel performance. Though the result might be influenced by other factors also, it is true that this table has shown the correlation between the performances. As recommendation for the following quarters, certain level of refurbishment and maintenance on the mentioned fields should be done at least every quarter, and especially July as it is the start of the peak season.
Over the year, we experienced high fluctuation when comparing performance to our comp set. Generally speaking, we were mostly outperformed by the comp set in all 3 indexes, apart from some success towards the high season. Even though Q1 started off low for everyone, we still didn't manage the low demand as well as the comp set. Especially the low ADR in the beginning brought down our ARI and therefore the RGI. MPI in March, of course, is an exception. However, it did bring down our ADR, which we could have leveraged more in other segments. Therefore, we still lost to comp set in ARI and RGI, and despite improved net profit, we could have been even more successful. As we expected a spike in occupancy for Q2, we decided to raise our rate significantly, which proved successful. It raised ADR and therefore our RGI above par. However, as we wanted to ensure that occupancy stays high and looking at our value price map, we decided to decrease rates, which resulted in all indexes falling significantly below comp set performance. Following this dip in ARI and again entering a new quarter, we once again managed to outperform the comp set, however, only in ARI and RGI. In terms of occupancy, the comp set managed to outperform us, which we can relate back to low reputation scores. The unproportionately high ADR did not prove to be a sustainable strategy, especially entering Q3 and Q4, where our property was outperformed by the comp set throughout all indexes. However, a positive trend can be observed toward the end of Q4, which could be due to the increased demand levels from large and small groups for their holiday celebrations. Of course, the goal for the coming month is to keep more constant indexes and to ultimately reach fair share.
Thanks guys for everything you had to say today. I think this meeting went very well. I'm gonna finish it off with some long-term goals that we have here at Sapphire Suites. Well, of course, we want to keep a weekday focus on business guests and large event groups, while having a weekend focus on leisure groups, while we don't get as much occupancy from other segments. Additionally, we want to implement more adaptive marketing in regards to it being able to change for seasonality, whether it's weekday, weekend, and the type of guests we're aiming to receive. Moreover, we want to add a fitness center and executive lounge, and of course, satisfy all guest needs. And last but not least, welcome to the team. We look forward to seeing you around at Sapphire Suites.